Welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast, the podcast that tries not to touch other people in the balls under any circumstances. This week on Heart and Hand, Mon the Cum Dog! So, welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name's David Edgar, I'm your host, and I'm joined this week by two of the finest that we can bring to the Heart and Hand table. First up, if he's not taking jobs abroad, he's in here firing off truth bombs. It's Mr. Ian Hogg.
Good evening, David. Good evening, everyone out there in cyberspace.
And it's without doubt, I would say the modern equivalent of Scott when it comes to crazy opinions, but far more talented and better looking. It's Mr. Alex Staff.
Hi there, David. Hi there, Ian. How are we doing, gentlemen?
We are, I think, all in good fettle this week, lads, as Rangers continued to put together a decent winning streak going into the Old Firm match with their sixth successive victory. Been a while, eh? Since we can quote those kind of stats. By beating Falkirk 4-1 in the Scottish Cup, Jason Cummings with a hat-trick and an own goal from what's his name, Muirhead, who we will come to later for other matters. Muirhead, of course, kind of spammed in. The nearest you'll get to an own goal, I think, that can be scored by an opposition player, if that makes sense. Alex, you said in your match report for Rangers, what is it, Rangers News UK?
Yeah.
That although there were some good performances, there was only really one shout for man of the match. And I must admit, it being you, I was going into it thinking, he's going to pick Bruno Alves, isn't he? But no, you had in fact played a conventional straight bat and gone for Jason Cummings, who I thought had an absolutely superb 90 minutes.
Yeah, he played pretty well, and that's not, I mean, even if you took away his goals, he still had a pretty good game, I thought, especially playing slightly out of position on the left-hand side. I remember Morelos swapped over quite well. If he hadn't scored the goals, I might have been more tempted to give it to Greg Dockery, but certainly he was certainly up there as one of the top performers, even taking away the goals. And by the way, can I just say his first goal was an absolute belter that I don't think gets or hasn't quite got a lot of credit so far. That was a cracking finish.
I think you could say the same about the second, because the touch not only controls it, but it brings it round. You know, like from the wing into the position where he needs it, and then he just passes it perfectly into the corner of the net. They're two absolutely superb finishes. If the guy doesn't make the own, or doesn't score the own goal, but his only other option is to make a miraculous clear, you know, it would be an absolute top draw clearance, then Cummings was there to put it away, and excellent striking play to follow up and get on the end of it. I thought, Hoggy, that his work rate impressed me, because I think I've mentioned before when he was signed and Hibs fans were going kind of tonto on social media, a comment that came up a lot was, "Oh, you guys will hate him because he's such a lazy bastard." He doesn't look like a lazy bastard.
No, he really put the shift in. First and foremost, a wee mention for our first 6-match winning streak since 1978, or at least it feels like it. And Cummings, I thought, was excellent. He was industrious, and his touch and his finish was just natural, and it was just, it's almost he's doing it unconsciously. It's just what he does. What really impressed me, however, was, for all Morelos had, let's face it, a bit of a stinker in front of goal, the pair of them are a pair of greedy bastards. I actually think that bodes well for us. Morelos in a bit of a stinker, and Cummings is there just almost expecting the mess up. And his third goal was the kind of obvious example of that. He's the first two off the keeper, and he gets his hat-trick. Whereas, previously it's Morelos there that's waiting on the mistake. So it's really encouraging performance yesterday. Not top drawer by any manner of means. I thought Tavernier also was superb again on the right hand side.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Doherty was excellent. Alves was interesting, and I think all in all, it bodes well going into the small matter of the game against the wee team next week.
People like a debate, and they're going to get one later on. There's one that I genuinely can't make my mind up about, so I will be looking to both of you for a bit of guidance more than anything else. But there's one other when we come to look at the team that may take to the field next week. But interesting first half, as I say. Rangers never really looked like not winning the match, and got the goal, of course, conceded very scrappy, let's be honest, bit of a fluke equaliser, but then 28 seconds later we're back in the lead, 3-1 at half time. The game was done and dusted. There was never the feel of there was going to be a cup shock, and I think that anyone who, Alex, hadn't seen us, they'd been away 3 months working or in prison. That was something that used to happen at my primary school when people's dads were, people, the kind of rough kids, their dads were working on the rigs like for 6 to 12. I don't think so. But if anyone had seen us in the run up to Christmas and then buggered off and came back, we look like a completely different team. Not only in the football we're playing, which is significantly better, but the way that they carry themselves, their attitude, their... I don't know. I mean, it's hard to put into words. Body language is an over-analysed aspect, but there's just something different about them that you maybe can't identify, but you can see. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, you can see there's a bit more confidence in a lot of them. And the actions, things like they're willing to pass to each other even when the other player's under a bit of pressure.
Yeah.
Because they get confidence not only in themselves but in their teammates. Now, I don't think was there, as little as 3 months ago, sorry. So there's that at least. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, David, have I heard you saying in the past that of all the kind of styles of football and teams that you enjoyed watching, if you had a choice to make Rangers into a certain type of team, you would have had them like Alex Ferguson's Man United, when they had Ronaldo, Tevez, Rooney.
Yeah, well, just my favourite style of football is the best Ferguson teams, which that one, or he had one in the mid-90s, where they had guys, I think it was like Keenan Ince in midfield, and they had Kanchelskis and Sharp and Giggs, were the three wingers that would interchange. I love fast, direct, attacking football where it's not long ball or anywhere close to it, but it's all about getting forward, working hard, making runs, great passing, beating a man to create space. I admire teams that can play wonderful possession football. It's just not my favourite. I like teams that can go from one end of a park to another with 4 or 5 wonderful passes. That's why I loved to see the fourth goal against Hamilton a few weeks ago. I just absolutely adored. Or Josh Windas's goal against St Johnstone. That's my kind of football.
Yeah, and even if you look at Josh Windas's goal against St Johnstone, if you look at the build-up before that, they've actually kept possession a little bit, but then all of a sudden it's just bang, 1-2 passes, you're through. Partick Thistle, Josh Windas's the first goal, 3 or 4 passes, we're up there at the end of the park. It's definitely a tactic, you can see it a mile away. We're looking to play that way, and even Cummings' hat-trick goal yesterday came from Windass breaking away, squaring Morelos, who should have scored, and then Cummings followed in, all very quick. It seems to me that it's not just a confidence thing. It's not just that they're playing a bit better. They've now been given an actual game plan. They've been given a directive, and it's a bit easier for a player like Windass, for example, that plays to his strengths. When we win that ball back, you run, Forrest. You know what I mean? That's exactly what it's like.
Oh, that comparison's valid on so many levels. No, you're right, and it's almost like the team is beginning to have an identity after, really, Warburton had an identity. I don't think he achieved it, but I could see what he wanted it to be. I don't think anyone could deny that they didn't know what that Rangers team was supposed to be. But I think that under Pedro, I never got the impression, or I couldn't see any form of visible identity being built. He spoke well, and he spoke a lot about things that sounded interesting, but very rarely did they translate onto the field in a coherent fashion. Whereas, yes, I can see what you're saying with this Rangers team, and it is a tactic about using what we have and not worrying about what we don't. And again, then, just to further it, and I'll let Alex finish off his point here because he made it, but then straight on to you, Hoggy. The signings, Alex, for the first time in a long time, and even Warburton, who, as stated, had a philosophy, didn't seem to do this. The signings fit that profile then of powerful, direct, decent technically, but maybe not technical marvels. If you look at guys like Docherty, he fits that because he box to box, he can drive. Goss, he passes, but he's like Michael Carrick in a way. You know, he likes to pass through teams and quickly and forward a lot. He's not a knitter together in midfield, really, Sean Goss. He can do that, but he's looking to get you on the front foot. You've got Cummings, whose pace likes to get in, likes to get a shot away. It's as if for once, Alex, we've actually signed players to fit something we're trying to do.
Yeah, and that's been the most exciting thing about the January transfers, is that they've all done that. You know, we had to see it in action before we could really appreciate it. But, you know, obviously you mentioned all the players there, and Murphy's the same as well in an attacking sense. It's direct, it's intelligent. You know, there's intelligence there, but they're not overplaying, they're not doing anything too complicated. It's still very good when it works, but it's not overly complicated like Warburton's system probably was, really. Just a bit too much.
It was, for the guys that were playing
trying to play through teams, whereas Graham Murphy's obviously just decided, right, okay, we're not even going to give teams time to set up defensively. When we win that ball back, it's going forward straight away. And it's not, you're right, it's not a long ball or anything like that, but it's you can see the evidence in the goals that we're scoring that it's having a good effect.
Hoggy?
A wee wry smile on my face there, David, when you talked about my pal Mark Warburton and his identity. I think the year of the snake springs to mind. Moving on from that, however, the two things on identity and game plan and confidence. The total embodiment of all of that just now is Josh Windass, maybe except when he's on Twitter. When he's on the football park 3 months ago, Windass would consciously or unconsciously hide when the going got tough. It was because he had so little confidence, and because he wasn't getting it. The performances weren't coming. Now, even when he's playing poorly, and he's maybe had a couple of poor games in the past, 6 or 7. He's never hiding. He's always shown for the ball. It's not always coming off, but he always wants it, and he's always trying to link up the play. There's the embodiment of this side over the past couple of months. And then add to that the kind of fast directness, the going forward. You're right, all the players just fit now. And is it any surprise that the players fit when we're playing them broadly in their natural preferred positions? It's been the first time in quite a long time that we've seen that. Players playing natural positions, and lo and behold, we're playing fast-flowing football. And I guess the last thing I'd say on it, David, is for the support watching it, hands up anyone who hasn't enjoyed the last 6 games.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that would be... Anyone who's... You can pick faults in it, absolutely, but anyone who hasn't overall enjoyed it, because, as I say, we look at winning games, we expect to win them, and we do, and we score goals, and I don't really know what else you can ask for from a Rangers team. Just when we're talking about Warburton as a little aside, now we all watch the games back, of course, and Sky's commentary yesterday was David Weir. Did either of you hear David Weir? Comms?
I watched it back late last night, David, and I felt like hitting mute.
Jesus, the Reverend I Am Jolly. I mean, what a fucking boring bastard Davy Weir was. And it just made me think about, can you imagine him and Warburton trying to give the Any Given Sunday speech? The lads would go, sorry, I was falling asleep there. It reminded me of the most boring priest in the world, the guy with a voice like that. It was like that. Obviously no longer a favoured son of Rangers. We'll see what the future brings for Davy Weir, but
and everything during the commentary was blah 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 and that was very good. Fucking come on, choose a different phrase.
However, still better than Andy Walker.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That is damning him by faint praise, yes.
And I know, but I'll take incremental improvement, in all honesty. But I was watching that, I'm like, Jesus Christ, he's going to... Because you're tired anyway watching it later, and then, I thought, Davy Weir, maybe not built for a career in co-coms, that's all I'm saying. So... It's opened up, obviously, a few selection dilemmas. We're just about to come to those. But before we do, let's have our weekly chat about referees. Because in the first half, just before Falkirk score, they have a free kick and there's some jostling in the box, which you come to expect. And David Weir suddenly goes to the ground holding his balls. And
David Weir?
David Bates, sorry. Rangers centre-half. David Bates... Davy Weir fell to the ground holding his balls. Luckily he was in the commentary box and he was able to recover. But David Bates fell to the ground clutching as George does. And the referee, Craig Thompson, runs over and books the defender, Muirhead, the Falkirk defender. The thing's shown back and Muirhead has a swing and looks as though he sort of flicks our boy in the nuts. Alex, how is that a yellow card?
This is the question that I think is fair to ask. It's not like we're being paranoid here or anything like that, any of that nonsense. That's now 2 incidents in 2 games, both involving Bates, where the referee must have seen something or he doesn't book a player. Yeah, what he's seen is surely a red card offence. Surely, in both occasions it is. So I just don't... I'd love to know their justification for only giving a yellow both times, and especially on Sunday, because, come on. If you can't sympathise, if you can't think to yourself, that's definitely offside, man, you've got to go for that when somebody punches somebody in the balls, then really, what have you got to do? Get yourself sent off.
Well, Muirhead said afterwards that he had just flicked him to try and get it away. All of us know how painful a flick in the balls is. A flick in the balls is ludicrously sore. It can end up actually making you puke. And as you say, any man who allows that on another man, that's just wrong. He should be like, I flicked him in the balls. You fucking bastard. Do you know how much nausea that can cause? That's really offside. Just don't go for another man's balls. Is it that difficult to realise? I've managed to get through life without grabbing people's balls. And I've played football and it never occurred to me, I'm going to grab his balls. I just didn't do it. But even at that, joking aside, the thing is, Hoggy, it's not about how much contact you made. We're told this over and over again. It's intent. We're told that. And I think we've got our head round it as even old-fashioned football fans, that tackles don't need to, get the guy. It's if you go in dangerously, you'll be off. You can get the ball and still be sent off. What other intent is there with that if you're swinging your arm into somebody's midriff?
Those past 2 games that we've had a St Johnstone defender take a swinging boot at poor David Bates, Ginger Boz, and maybe not quite connect, but he's taken a swinging boot and he gets booked. So the referee has seen him boot David Bates, and it's a booking for violent conduct, which is a sending off every day of the week. And Muirhead can say, I only tried to flick him in the balls. He takes a fucking swing at him and he connects, and Bates is down and his poor ginger nuts have got it again. There is an element of humour, clearly, because
it's his balls.
Someone else getting hit the balls is funny. But in all seriousness, there's another case of violent conduct that the referee, a different referee, has seen, and he produces a yellow card. So the question to both refs is, why are you not sending players off for violent conduct? And the second question is then, if Ryan Jack is getting sent off for having his feet stood on, and if Ryan Jack is getting sent off for being grabbed round the neck by Anthony Stokes, neither of them violent conduct, what the fuck is going on?
Now, I think that I'll play devil's advocate here a wee bit. I agree. Hoggy, I think, there has identified, Alex, that this is blatant anti-ginger racism, and I think we would all agree with that and say that it must be stamped out, especially on the Ginger Prince. But referees, I believe, can say that something isn't violent conduct but is in fact ungentlemanly conduct, and you can get away with only giving a yellow card for that. So for instance, standing on someone's foot, not stamping, but going over, we saw that at the weekend on Match of the Day when a player just goes over and kind of stands on the other guy's foot deliberately, but not in a violent, not in a stamping way. And I'm sure we have all had that happen to us at a corner kick at one point. Or Hoggy, you've bound to have done it several thousand of time in matches. But that, if the ref sees it, he would more than likely say that's ungentlemanly conduct, which basically appears to be, you're being a bit of a narky twat rather than you're at it. But I don't see how a kick and a swing of the arm into an opponent can be classed as ungentlemanly conduct, because they are both acts. No matter how well how well the guy undertakes them, if he lands it or not, they're still that fall under the very wide-ranging header of violent conduct, and they should be dismissals.
Let's imagine for a wee second, David, that this coming Sunday, let's take any Rangers player. Let's call him Alfredo Morelos, boots Kieran Tierney in the balls and then follows it up with a swinging punch to the balls. Is that one yellow card or two yellow cards?
Probably just one straight one. But yeah, I know what you're saying, and everybody agrees with it. That's the thing. But we don't seem to ever highlight it. Now, Alex, you've been on here before and you've said there's no point highlighting it. It doesn't do any good. In fact, it's just as likely to turn the refs further against you than it is. But in an instance like this, where Rangers have had 2 instances in a week, is there not a difference between highlighting, bad referees or trying to control the narrative, as Hoggy says, and simply saying publicly, we have had these 2 incidents, we would like to know why these are not, just for future, and at least introduce it into the conversation, because out with Rangers fan, this isn't being spoken about, and this is not something that is getting any attention. And because Rangers have won the 2 matches, they didn't particularly affect the outcome of the 2 matches. They've both been kind of forgotten about. I don't think they should be. I think Rangers should be coming out and saying, these 2 incidents to us look like red card offences. We can't understand why they're not. Could the SFA explain to us quite what the decision-making process is, as other clubs have done in the past? And that I think, at least brings it to the front, and at least makes referees think, actually, I can't get away with what I do genuinely believe is a sort of, Rangers are much better than them anyway, I don't want to be too harsh on them, it's just Falkirk or St Johnstone are getting pumped here, I'm not going to send them off. I think that it might act as a reminder that, no, I'm sorry, there are rules and you have to apply them, that is your job.
It might, yeah. I mean, I know I'm quite I can't think of the right word. I'm a bit of a dick with this argument, is probably the best way to describe it. I can see both sides of it, trust me. I think that I'd be very surprised if there's not been a phone call or some sort of contact with the SFA to ask why was that only a yellow card from the club. Whether it's best to do it publicly, I don't know. My reasoning is, David, you said there, no one else is talking about this but Rangers fans. They're not if they are going to talk about it, it's not going to be in any sort of balanced, rational way when we see it. I just feel as though if you're going to start a conversation about refereeing in Scotland, Rangers are the wrong people to start that conversation, because we don't get a fair hearing from anybody. So, I think all clubs should be asking some serious questions about it, because all of them have struggled with it in some way this season through some horrendous refereeing. But unfortunately, if we bring it up first, it's only going to just turn into a look at the cunts moaning, No, I understand that, but even from that point of view, I still think it's worth doing just
as I say, so that if it becomes public, regardless, the SFA, I think, will say to the referees, look, rules are rules. We understand that maybe, human emotion has overrode your decisions there, but you need to apply, if it's a red card, even if a team's getting pumped, you need to do the red card. That is the only kind of benefit I can see happening. I don't expect... The problem that we have is, and we can talk about this over and over, and we will, but until the SFA fundamentally look at the standard of refereeing in this country, we're going to keep having these conversations, because over and above whether or not you believe referees are... referee Rangers in a different fashion, and I know that all three of us do believe that Rangers are refereed to a different standard than other teams. I watched the games on Scott Sport this week. I don't normally, and I saw some ludicrous decisions in the other games as well. There was our man John Beaton, of course, with his penalty given to Celtic for a foul on the halfway line. There was the Motherwell game with a goal incorrectly disallowed for Motherwell. There are bad game-changing decisions happening all across Scotland in matches which have absolutely no effect on Rangers or Celtic. So it's not that. It's because the standard of refereeing is utter toilet.
There's that as well. I actually think the first step for me, because we don't have the cash in this country to turn referees professional, or it doesn't look like we do. So that would be the biggest step. It would make a difference. Nothing's going to be perfect, but that would make a big difference. But I think a kind of intermediate step would be to allow referees to explain decisions, or at least, maybe not directly, but they've got to write a report after the game. That's going to have that yellow card mentioned and the reason for the yellow card. Release that. Let the fans know what the referee's thinking was. And if it just turns out it was flawed, wrong thinking, and he's seen something that we haven't, and the replays have given us the benefit of a much better decision, then at least we'll be able to turn around and say, okay, he just fucked that up. But that's now 2 decisions in a row where you have to ask, if they're not seeing that as violent conduct, what the hell are they seeing? Because and we'll never know. We'll never be told. And that just that then just makes the whole debate meaningless in many respects, because one side's not able to engage in it.
No, that's a fair point. Hoggy?
Me, David. I think Rangers, especially this season, have been refereed to a different standard. I'm a big one for wanting to try and control the narrative. And by that I mean I like this stuff, and if it sows seeds of doubt so that these things aren't happening or folk think twice, then great. What I don't want Rangers to do, however, is come out with Murty or Jimmy Nicholl all guns blazing in the press conference with a negative spin saying that was so shit because then I think what Alex saying is true. That's how it would be picked up immediately. I think how we go about it to introduce it as a topic is you actually almost spin it positively with the upcoming game on Sunday. You talk about the decisions that have gone against us, and clearly 2 potential but not game-changing decisions over the past couple. You hope the referee, whoever he is, has a smashing game and nothing like that occurs. And it just starts to sow it into people's minds, but you're doing it in a positive way.
Well, I think that the overriding concern here is David Bates's balls. Because Can you imagine the state of them by now? I mean, they will be purple. And, downstairs is going to look like a 70s carpet when you consider his, already red-headed status. When you fire in big purple shiny bruises as well. And I think Rangers are quite within their rights to release a picture of David Bates's testicles and say, would you look at the state of this young lad's his testes. We need protection for our centre half's crown jewels.
Wait, can you imagine on Christ? You remember the outcry, and David, on the Patreon site, you and Happy Jack did the Gaza the Gaza shows, which were superb, and you talked about him playing the flute at Parkhead or playing the imaginary flute. Can you imagine David Bates scoring the winner and down come the shorts and all you see is orange and purple? The place would go fucking mad.
I think as well that the players should do. You know, like it's becoming fashionable that when a player gets injured, the rest of his teammates wear T-shirts saying, you know, like, don't give up, and you know, you'll be back from your hamstring injury in 3 weeks, that kind of thing. I think our players should take to the field saying we are all Bates's balls. And
that's a fantastic idea.
I think
sell them at the shops.
We are all Bates's balls. Get behind it, folk. There's a hashtag, Bates's balls, or Bates balls, because that extra S is just going to confuse things. Bates balls. We are all Bates balls, and we're behind your nuts, David. I want you to know that, son. I want you to know that we are 100% in lockstep with the contents of your shorts. Now, moving on. We have two selection dilemmas, lads, I think, for this upcoming game. The news, very early news, obviously, about the two injuries, main ones being Declan John and Jamie Murphy, is that Rangers are pretty hopeful, I think, if you listen to Graham Murray yesterday, that's the talk that was being put out across the media, that they're very hopeful that John and Murphy will come back. So let's just imagine for a second that that's the case, right? John and Murphy are playing. I think that only really leaves two spots open, because I think the rest of the team is picked if that's the case. Would we agree then that the back four, if that was the case, Wes will obviously be in goal, the back four will be Tav on one side, John on the other, and then the centre back positions we're just about to talk about. Docherty and Goss will play midfield, Candeas and Murphy will play wide, and Windass will be a second striker. Would we both agree, or would you both agree, that is likely, those positions are in fact nailed down for next week?
Definitely.
100%, yes.
Yeah, right. Centre back, let's kick off with the more contentious one. Now, Bruno Alves played yesterday, and I thought he looked very rusty. I thought he looked slow. I thought he looked great in the air. He always does. But I thought he looked cumbersome. I thought he drops far too deep to cover for what I suspect he realises is a lack of pace. And he confused the rest of the defence several times, who kind of didn't know whether to go with him or stay further forward or whatever. And he gave away several stupid free kicks repeatedly that a better team would have punished. I think Russell Martin will come back in. I think Bates is already selected, and I would probably agree with that. But Alex, you said earlier today to me that you felt that Alves is the best centre half at the club, although you did say, and I will point this out in fairness, that you wouldn't play him on Saturday because he's not fit enough yet. But I kind of don't know how you've arrived at that conclusion based on what we have seen, if I'm being totally honest with you. So take the floor.
It's been based upon games such as St Johnstone away, if you remember the corner barrage game. Hibs away, especially second half, when we were right under the cosh.
I would say only the second half. I thought he had a very poor first half that night.
He made one mistake, which was lining a guy on side. He then shepherded him out and forced him to play a ball back away 25 yards, and then had to still be the closest person to the shot because everybody else stood about going, oh, what do we do? And then there was Aberdeen at home, where he strolled it like some sort of fucking god, to be honest. He's had those games, and I did say it's been less than a handful for us. It's not been a huge amount. When he's fully fit, I believe overall he's our best defender. I don't think, and I say this with, you know, all the love for Bates's testicles that we've shown, I don't think there's a huge amount of competition in there to say that. I don't think, you know, I'm not as critical of Russell Martin as a lot of people have been, but you know, I know that he's a good defender at his best. He's never been a great one, you know. Bates is still learning, and he has some great games like he had when he came on against Celtic, and some horrendous games like Kelly away, for example. That's just going to happen with him. The only other one that would be better would be McCrory, and that's still to be proven because we've only seen him for, you know, less than a dozen games. So I just think that if he's fully fit, Alves is our best defender, but he is nowhere near fully fit at the moment. Absolutely nowhere near it. That was his first start of the year in Sunderland, and it showed a mile away. As you said, David, he was just off. he was off. It was a yard away from his pressing, which is why he's giving away the fouls. Because he's not getting out as quick as he usually would to a player or such. Like, I seen one he gave away in the second half, and just from the angle I sat at, I could see Graham Murty, in my eye line, and Murty was fuming with a daft foul that he gave away. I think you're right. There's no way Alves starts against Celtic, because I don't think Murty was impressed with how he played at all.
I don't want anybody going away from this and thinking that Davey said that David Bates and Russell Martin are better players than Bruno Alves, because I'm not, right? I'm talking about right now, this week, who is likely to put in a better display. And I just felt that he was, as I see, so far off the pace against a pretty poor side that I would have worried badly if it had been a better side who would have caused them more of an issue. And I mean, Hoggy, you know that position well. I'd agree with everything Alex said, to be honest, that yes, Alves, certainly, I mean, you cannot look at his ability. Whether he can still access that ability as he gets older, I don't know. I don't think we've seen it regularly enough for Rangers. But in terms of ability, he's head and shoulders the best defender that we have. But I don't think at the moment he can go into that match and offer us as much as the other two will currently.
I posed a question to you guys on our WhatsApp group that shall remain under strict lock and key forever. Should Alves come back in? That was before yesterday. I think his performance yesterday almost nails down Bates and Russell Martin. Russell Martin started okay. He's not exactly set the heather alight. I think the last game at Ibrox that we played there, we had at one point in the first half, in the first 15 minutes or so, Alves trying to calm Martin and Bates down. And I wondered how Alves would play yesterday after such a long layoff. And the answer, especially in the first half, was not very well. So I think it's an absolute stick on David that it's Bates, barring injury, it's Bates and Martin, unless Rangers get a kind of bounce game that's been touted under their belts this week, and Alves turns in. He would have to turn in some performance, probably with 90 minutes, to have any shout of starting on Sunday.
I mean, it is difficult because, of course, you're tempted. It's Bruno Alves, and you want to chuck him in. And there is, I suppose, the argument that a guy of his experience might thrive in that atmosphere. And also the fact is, you're right, it's not like Martin or Bates have absolutely nailed a place that says, yes, I am undroppable. So I can understand the temptation, but you're right. I think that yesterday there was just too many rough edges that will get sounded off with more game time, but it's too big a game too quickly, in my opinion, to bring him in.
Yeah, you've got to consider the opposition as well. Bruno Alves will win headers all day, probably until the day he dies. Let's be honest, right? The guy will be beating, any player to a header at the age of 90, probably. But Celtic aren't going to get very many high balls played. That's not their game. It's by a mile they're the least in the league for that sort of style of play or that sort of pass. So yeah, he might have been useful with the set pieces, but that's all a bit of a lottery anyway in many respects. So there's no need to bring Bruno Alves in thinking that we're going to get barraged with long high balls. It's not going to happen, and Russell Martin probably suits this game better, even taking away the fact that he's a good bat head in terms of match sharpness.
Yeah.
What I would say, David, is whoever we pick at the back, they both have to have a good game next Sunday.
Oh yeah.
So simple as that. There's going to be an element of almost good fortune about it, that we've got to have two guys who are absolutely on it for 90 minutes. For me, it would be Bates and one other, and it's a bit of a toss-up, really, for me, between Russell Martin and Bruno Alves. Martin wins it simply because he's had more game time recently.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I think that will be the decision as well. I think Graham Murty's in his view, his strongest team is the one that took to the field against Hearts. And I mean in terms of not with the long-term injury guys, your McCrorys, etc. I think that he feels with the current squad that is. But the other position, which has become more interesting clearly, is up front, where Alfredo Morelos had a very poor match. Jason Cummings scored 3. And of course the clamour is to get him in. Morelos was awful. Missed good chances in the game against... I was going to say he was poor against Celtic last night. He wasn't. He played well. He just didn't score 2 glorious chances that he should have. But in balance to that, against St Johnstone, he was absolutely superb. He was the best player in the park, in my opinion. So do you go and say, well, hat-trick, hot streak, put him in? Or do you go, no, look at his all-round game, we know what he'll do, I'm going to stick with him. He's the better player and he's my man. What do you think? What would you do, first of all, Alex? And what do you think Graham Murty will do?
I would play Morelos, and I'm convinced Murty will play Morelos, and then Cummings will be on the bench. I also believe, I suppose there's a couple of reasons there. There's no guarantee, just because Jason Cummings scored a hat-trick there doesn't mean he's automatically going to have a better game than Morelos in the next one. That's kind of the flaw with that argument. Morelos has had a very good, consistent season, the odd performance aside, and unfortunately the game against Falkirk was one of those performances. But there's every chance he's got as good a chance of playing well as Cummings does, despite the fact that Cummings got a hat-trick in the last game. I would say, I don't know if you guys would agree with this, if you had those two options and you figured you wanted one of them to come off the bench and make a big impact in the game, Cummings is more likely to be a good impact from the bench than Morelos is, in my opinion.
I think Morelos takes about 10 minutes to get fully into a game, and there are some players that don't make. By that I don't mean that he doesn't do it, I just mean you can see him almost warming up, and he gets the elbows loosened and he gets his backside working and starts winning the ball. And some players are good impact players. I think Cummings has got that in his locker. The other thing for me, why I would go for Morelos, is I think his all-round game is better. So while the argument could be put forward that Jason Cummings is possibly more likely to get you a goal, I think Morelos is more likely to be involved in moves that lead to goals. You know what I mean? I think that we've got other goal scorers in the side as well as the main striker, which we didn't have at Parkhead, incidentally. As we saw, if the striker didn't score, we were kind of fucked for goals. That's not the case now, especially if Murphy's back. And I think that he's a better team player, although I do think that in time Cummings might prove to be the better goal scorer, simply because I think he's a more natural finisher. I think at times you can see with Alfie that he's learning to finish a lot of the time. I think you can see that in his development. But for me, just from a team aspect, yes. And also exactly what you say. I remember Hoggy and I discussing this at the time on one of the pods, where one of the things that really broke our hearts about that 0-0 draw was when it was clear that Morelos was not going to be capable of hitting a Kuzars with a banjo that day. We had nothing on the bench to bring on. Whereas the last thing Celtic would have wanted that day when we were on top would have been us being able to go, on you go Jason, and giving him 20 minutes. And I like that opportunity if we've got. So yeah, I would do the same. Hoggy, I mean, would you do anything different?
Nah, I think it would be a clean sweep from me. It would be Morelos. I think it's no surprise that Cummings seems to play well and scores goals when Morelos is in the team. I think we see sometimes Cummings, when he comes on for Morelos, can struggle a little bit because of the way that, and we've already talked about this, because of the way that we set up, fast and direct and so on. Sometimes that requires the physicality, the ability to hold the ball, the ability to bring the midfield or the wide guys into play. Morelos has got that in spades. Another reason I would play Morelos is when he does have a stinker, invariably his next game he has a top game. And we've seen that recently. Was it Thistle to St Johnstone? Was it Thistle? I think it was.
Hearts to St Johnstone it was.
Hearts to St Johnstone, apologies. So we saw that then. Against Hearts he was poor, certainly from a finishing point of view. St Johnstone top, he was poor against Falkirk. I would be expecting he'll be itching to go. However, Cummings will be itching to go as well. I just think he is. If it's a question of either or, then all the evidence points to Morelos has to start.
Well, I think that some people will be listening saying, why are you talking like it's either or? Why don't we play both of them? I'll be honest, I think it's because there is no chance, not even a tiny, minute chance, that they both play and Josh Windass doesn't. Maybe if Jamie Murphy doesn't play, Windass might go left then, possibly. But other than that, no. Alex, am I completely mistaken here? I just think there's no chance at all of that.
We've got 5 attacking players, and in many respects we take a bit of a risk playing 4 from the start. And, the 5th one is usually Jason Cummings on the bench. Those are the kind of 5, a front 4, a regular front 4 of late. And then, Cummings coming off the bench is the players that we're looking to fit in. Somehow you can't play all 5 of them. No way of doing that. And then I think Cummings played quite well in the position yesterday. I thought he was a bit better when he did switch with Morelos. I thought Morelos was almost a bit more effective wide, and Cummings was, he got his first 2 goals from being in a central area. But I think Cummings was played there in the off chance, probably shouldn't have said the off chance, on the chance that Murphy doesn't make it. And then he might actually be tempted just to play Cummings wide left again and have a real go, rather than the other option, which would be, as you say, move Windass wide and maybe even bring in a midfielder and be a bit more solid as such. I think Murty's made his mind up that he's going to have a real go at them in this one. So that was the reason for Cummings playing that position instead of changing the formation against Falkirk.
That wouldn't, gut me if Jamie Murphy didn't make it as the solution, but I'd be gutted if Jamie Murphy didn't make it, because I think he's absolutely key to our chances of winning that game. I think his influence, I don't think we're completely screwed without him, but I'd feel a hell of a lot better with him in the team.
I think everybody would, yeah. From the minute he went off injured, there's been a collective praying he makes a game, hasn't there? Yeah. From our fans. So yeah, there's everybody wants him on the pitch, and you know what, Jimmy Murphy's the sort of player that even if he doesn't play well, he'll have an influence on the game, because he's intelligent, he's movement, he's attacking, sort of the way he stretches defences and things like that. They've struggled at right back all season. The person who they've played most of the season is suspended. I'm not sure what they'll know the exact answer for how to deal with him on that side of the pitch.
Now, moving on, this week that we had a couple of interesting things that pop up in the paper about these times before matches. That there seems to be a new fashion among Tims or ex-Tims that they've got their greatest hits that they like to play at times like this. When I was growing up in Cameroon, I listened to the BBC World Service to hear tales of Mark McGee and Davy Provan playing for the famous Celtic, and when the aid truck arrived I was hoping for a Celtic Subbuteo team. That's one of their favourites. A new one seems to be, when I played for Celtic I was in terrible fear of my life, which I kept under wraps for decades and never thought to mention up until you phoned me for this interview. I'm sure, of course, that we'll all recall how Peter Grant had a golf ball thrown at him with a nail through it that unfortunately no one can seem to remember, no papers seem to reference, and there's no footage of, which is odd. You would have thought something like that would be noticed in a game at Ibrox. I'd like to think I'd notice, see if somebody threw a golf ball into the park, I'd like to think I'd remember that. Yeah?
Unless it was a green golf ball with a green nail, and I'm going to suggest that's maybe unlikely.
It was probably unlikely. Yeah, I don't want to call Peter Grant a liar, but I will. And then, of course, there was Didier Agat going to training in his armoured car.
Which one of you guys remembers Didier Agat driving around Glasgow, Milton Campsie and Lennoxtown in the fucking Batmobile?
exactly. Didier Regat, who you may have seen, couldn't even go for a curry at that time, but again miraculously kept it under his hat all these years. Joe Miller, who of course was almost shot and killed in a match in Belfast in the 90s that didn't take place by JFK's assassin, and luckily managed to make it back to help Real Madrid to win 10 consecutive Scudettos. And the latest one to join this club is Pierre Van Hooijdonk, former Celtic player of the 90s, who left rather acrimoniously, but is now back doing events as, come meet Celtic legend Pierre Van Hooijdonk. And I'm sure that's got nothing to do with this, incidentally. I'm sure it's totally unrelated. He said that it was scary. Someone once came to his door, spat at him and ran away. And another time that he was sent razor blades in the post. Now, I've been sent razor blades in the post. It was a free offer from Gillette. I didn't take it as a threat on my life. I think he may just be confusing advertising and threatening behaviour. But this is bollocks, isn't it?
Pretty much. Certainly, if you want to be kind to them, and we don't want to be kind to them, so you can just ignore what I'm saying here. But at the absolute best, it's misremembering. And if you want to be cynical or truthful about it, it's just telling some stories, hamming them up a bit to sell some tickets to his tour. Do you know what? I've no doubt that he took some abuse while he was here. No doubt in my mind at all. That's going to happen. If they want stories, go and speak to Nacho Novo. Go and speak to DeMarcus Beasley. Speak to these guys. They've got plenty to tell as well. But they haven't. Why have they not told them? Because it's just fucking par for the course, sadly. And they've just, got on with it. Can't help but think, though, see if Van Hooijdonk was a bit later at Celtic and he said that someone came to his door spatting him and ran away. If he was like in the 2000s, I would have fully expected that to have been Fernando Rickson.
I think the thing,
because it's sort of, he would have found that funny.
I think those of us who remember Pierre Van Hooijdonk may have thought that if he was at a doorway and got covered in bodily liquids, then there'd be a more sinister story to it, and it wouldn't be spit necessarily that was dripping up down his chin at the end of it. But that would be unfair. But Hoggy, I think Alex has absolutely nailed it there. It becomes scarcely believable considering, okay, maybe he doesn't want to say it at the time. Years later, we played Feyenoord in the UEFA Cup, and he scored twice, played very well against us. He didn't mention it then. He did mention that Dick Advocaat had tried to sign him for Rangers, but he didn't mention this at the time, and it does make me question whether or not it's true.
So Alex tried to be fair to the guy. I'll be fair in my own way and call him a fucking liar. I think if he's getting razor blades sent through the post, he's obviously subscribed to Cornerstone. Well done, and you've forgotten about it, Pierre. I'm going to suggest that if someone had spat in your face in your doorway, you'd have been all over the press about it, because let's face it, back in the day when he was at Celtic, he was never out the fucking press.
Back then, Hoggy, if somebody spat in his face at his door, given the way he left Celtic in the last 3 months of his time there, it was probably a Celtic fan.
Indeed. So, and of course, after all these years, he just happens to be on an ex-Celtic player's circuit and making money from it. Call me a dirty old cynic, but Pierre, I think you're lying, mate. Much in the same way as I think Didier Batmobile is lying, the same way as I think Peter Grant was lying. And I must admit, the whole thing simply made me think of really the one and only incident that we all actually saw when Paolo Di Canio was threatening to break Ian Ferguson's legs and then utterly shat it and run away. So, you know, let's play a straight bat, Pierre, and I think straight bat is probably going back to your doorway analogy.
It just why do they do this? I mean, how do Celtic? what's this weird culture
because
of
it sells,
oppression and
because
victim?
It sells,
not
it
that,
sells
but
papers,
why
and
does it appeal to the Celtic support? I get why the papers print it, right? They're trying to stir it up. Of course, they would never do that. They don't want to see nasty scenes at the football. Aye, very good, fuck off. But we know why they do it. What is this thing that Celtic supporters like? What this appeals to them? Why? What is this revelling in victimhood? What is this culture of oppression? This fetish to be, if you like, held under somebody's boot? I don't get it. I don't understand why they need to make this shit up and why their audience reacts well to it. If we came on here in tears every week complaining about how shit our life was, it wouldn't be very successful. If in a Celtic podcast they did that and went, and it's 'cause of the Huns, they would be top of the Apple charts. It's a weird thing I don't profess to understand. Help me.
I don't think there is. I mean, it's just, I suppose from a psychological point of view, it's a bit of a shield, You can blame failure on everybody else. Kind of like Alex Salmond's whole approach to politics, really, Just this idea that it doesn't matter how many mistakes he made, it was all some big bad person's fault anyway. Yeah. So it's just about a psychological shield. I think that's part of why it appeals to so many. And, if we're, again, I'm being that hand-wringer fair type. It's not all Celtic fans. It's just a very noisy number of them. It's weird. Have you guys? I'm guessing over the years, you guys have maybe been to some speaker dinners or such like. Yeah. I was at one recently, and it was Murdo MacLeod, who was there telling some cracking stories, and he was actually quite good. But the difference is, I know that he's hamming up, but he's making it funny.
Yeah.
He's telling a couple of stories about McCoist and Souness and things that were funny stories, and I know there's probably a bit of bullshit in there, but they were a good laugh. This is completely different. If you're going to sell tickets for a tour and that's your approach, then great. But if you're going to do it like these guys are doing, then as I say, it's kind of ridiculous. And I just don't. Have we ever had an equivalent? Help me out, guys. You maybe know better than me. Have we ever had any player, past or present, at the time, come out and give us equivalent stories to this?
No.
Because I can't think of one.
No. And as you mentioned earlier, Nacho certainly could. But Nacho comes out and talks about the things he did for us. And maybe that is at the heart of it. But, Van Hooijdonk doesn't have an awful lot of those stories. Because he did stay for a bit and then fuck off acrimoniously. It was, to be on a Celtic Legends tour, aye. I think that Trade Descriptions Act there. Which actually leads us on nicely to a final point. Hoggy, this is one for all the Celtic fans who will have listened to the end in the hope of being offended. You are going to be offended, but not in the way that you would like to be. Hoggy, UEFA.
Yes. So UEFA published their new outline coefficients, and it follows the past 10 years, would you believe? All the way back currently to, I think it's 2007, 2008. My God, that was a long season, 6 to 8 games for us. And we're on it.
But amazingly. How? But how?
Do you know, UEFA must have made a mistake because, Jerry and Fergus and all their pals emailed UEFA continually, if you remember, to tell them that we're a new club. So either UEFA have just fucking ignored them, or it's a mistake. I'm guessing mistake, David.
Alex, the switchboard operator in Neon today must have been busier than on the day that they came and arrested Sepp Blatter. It must have been non-stop. Can I speak to the guy that deals with this, by the way? Huns are pure beat, by the way. Continually for 8 hours. And I can only imagine right now what the crowdfunding is for. They're probably, as we speak, composing an advert in Arabic to go in a Dutch newspaper.
I was just going to bring up the advert because
explain to people who don't know. Explain what that was.
I don't remember the full ins and outs of this one because I just laughed about it too much. But as many of you will remember, Celtic fans commissioned 2 adverts, one in English, and I believe the other was possibly, was it
French?
French,
yeah.
I thought so. Yeah, one in English and one in French to go on about that Resolution 12 and Rangers being a new club and, just take the old Sevco bingo. And somehow managed to switch the languages around so that the English advert went into the French newspaper and vice versa, making it a complete waste of time and money, and honestly still my absolute favourite piece of Sevcoing, because you couldn't have wrote that, you could not have scripted that. But if you put that in a comedy show, Peter, being like, there's no way anybody's that fucking stupid.
If you put Tim's in a sitcom, if you put Tim's in a sitcom, then you're right. People would just go, "This is so unrealistic. I can't get into it at all. It's just nonsense." And you're like, "No, they actually do this. This is how they behave."
It's up there with my all-time Sevco favourite from, and I wouldn't mention the band of nut jobs, but their slogan was, with Resolution 12, "Persistence beats resistance."
Oh, God,
and they sold T-shirts with the rapiest sounding slogan ever.
It's kind of the anti-Me Too, that one, isn't it? I mean, persistence beats resistance. Fuck, you wore that to the Oscars, which, let's face it, if one of them had been working there, they would have. That would have got you lifted, and deservedly so. Look, Tim's listening, I can't believe how often I need to tell you this. You have no idea how high this goes. Okay? Just learn your lesson. Go back to the gutter. Complain to all the other sewer rats. This is not for you. It's beyond your understanding. Anyway, I think that will do us this week with a good old laugh at Celtic. We'll be back later in the week for a full, more tactical breakdown of the match on Sunday. Before I leave you tonight, just a reminder that you can get loads and loads of content. You've heard us reference some of it tonight on our Patreon site for just $1.99 per month. There's tons and tons of stuff there, over 40 to 50 hours per month of new Rangers content, and it's got all types. We've got comedy shows. We had an absolute mess of a comedy show with us and Cammy the other night that was that went up, that wasn't very funny. But we've got look backs at our classic teams, classic players, tactical breakdowns from Alex of the opposition, tactical breakdowns of post match from tactical experts. It's not me and Hoggy, it's guys who know what they're talking about. We've got all sorts, and a daily news update as well, just to keep you right up to date with what's going on with Rangers. All that remains for me to do then is to thank our executive producers in London, Mr. Mike Lee and Mr. Paul Myers, to thank my guest tonight, the wonderful Mr. Ian Hogg.
Thank you, David, as ever, and I'd just like to say I look forward to the meeting tomorrow night. Make sure you wear that special apron.
Shush.
Oh, sorry.
Shush, it's a secret. And, of course, the ever-delectable Mr. Alex Staff.
Thank you, David, always a pleasure.
Thank you very much for listening, folks. We'll be back on Thursday. Till there, take care, and remember, UEFA approved, we are still the people. Bye!